Kelly, hey, congratulations for My Fiona.
Thank you.
Hey, so let's start off with that easy question. What sparked you to do the story for My Fiona?
Yeah, so I've been doing a ton of short films and I was ready to write a feature. I didn't know what it was. And I kind of went back to when I was 12, my babysitter passed away from suicide and how that just kind of like changed, I kind of think, the course of who I was to become. This being 12 years old and realizing like people you love can just leave at any minute. And that idea that grief is so everybody's experience is personal to their own, and each person you grieve differently. And
Mhm.
I've always been like weirdly fascinated by death in the sense that I'm terrified of people I love dying. So I was like, you know what, I read a quote, write what you fear the most, and get it out. So I was like, I guess it's going to be about that. And then around the same time, I was kind of owning my sexuality as a bisexual and kind of putting a voice to that for the first time. So I wanted to also honor the idea that sexuality, it's such a gray shade, it's such a big scope. And the idea of labeling it maybe is unnecessary. Maybe it's not for all of us. And having to like claim yourself as one thing or the other. So it was those two kind of things intersected and then became My Fiona.
Well, I mean, if this is your first feature, this is quite challenging. I mean, no one tackles the idea of both death and sexuality as their first. But
Yeah, I was like, go big or go home, right?
was it complex to write the story, or I mean, did it take quite some time to find that right formula?
Yeah, it was 3 years of writing, four drafts back to like square one, blank page. A couple times I was going to toss it. I was like, you know what, I give up. I've gotten out of it what I need emotionally. I can't see myself figuring this out. And then eventually it just started to become what it was supposed to be. And it was a lot of just taking out elements of it that weren't necessary. At one point, it almost read like a whodunit film. Like it was Jane investigating the suicide of Fiona, and the whole thing was kind of almost like a film noir. So it went through a lot of different versions until it was what I feel like was the truest in my heart, which was also the scariest one to write.
I think I one of the things I was wondering about that was because Jane was doing a little bit of investigation. We didn't really have a real answer for My Fiona, which is terrific because that would have made an entirely different movie
Yeah.
if that was the case.
Well, that's what I kind of realized too is like the whole point of in the beginning, we see that she gets a text message. I don't know if I should say that here, but like we don't discuss it, right? And the point is when people lose people to suicide, we never get an answer. It's just you kind of have to find a way to move through your life with the question mark and somehow live alongside the question mark. So I kind of wanted to honor that. And in the other version, you can't do a whole movie about who done it and not say who done it. And it kind of negated the whole point of why I wanted to honor those that have passed from suicide.
Well, one of the things when people get to watch it, and it's not quite a spoiler because the fact is you just went right off the bat in the first 45 seconds or 55 seconds of your film. Tell me about that tack that you actually use. I mean, you wasted no time whatsoever.
Yeah. Yeah. Actually that's exactly what happened to my brother and a friend of his that passed away from suicide.
Hmm.
They were at work. He said, I'll be right back. And it was a similar situation to what happens in the opening of the film. And my it was just the idea that people always speculate on suicide. Well, what were they like? What were they thinking? What were they doing? What was there anything strange right before? And usually there isn't. Usually we don't see the signs and then we beat ourselves up for not seeing the signs. But I kind of wanted to honor the idea that no one in those first minute or whatever it is sees anything all that odd, you know? And I wanted our audience to be in the same time frame as Jane. Like they're experiencing what she experiences with no cuts.
Hmm. That's why she's trying to pick up the pieces together. Now, let's talk about Jane as a character, because for one thing, there, the film is about suicide, but for another, it's also about her character struggling to lose her best friend since high school. And not only that, her personality seems like she's very dependent, or I want to say both Jane and Gemma seem to be very dependent on people.
Yeah. Yeah, I think so. I wanted to look at the way that our souls, we almost like give our parts of ourselves to our best friends and go, you keep this safe for me. And yet we don't do enough for, I mean, if you have a best friend and you have almost a codependency with your friendship, and I'm not saying this is every friendship, you kind of lose yourself and your independent growth along the way. And when that friendship either breaks up or someone dies, you have to rebuild who you are without them. And so much of who you are was the mirror they held to you. And I've kind of noticed that with friendships that ended, it's like this bewilderment of like, I don't know who I am without this person. I don't know what clothes I like to wear. I don't know what music I listen to if they're not here to reinforce something. And it is a very codependent way of thinking. And I just liked the idea of having to find yourself, independently or alone, in hopes to like almost like fully become a human in a way.
Mm-hmm. Well, then let's because all of this leads to Jane and Gemma's relationship, obviously, because I guess if you're watching it, it's either out of I don't want to say out of convenience, but it's sort of like a missing. They both trying to put in that missing piece into their lives. Could you talk about that relationship and the LGBT, sexual relationship that kind of evolves from that?
Yeah, so I think it's definitely a relationship birthed from trauma bonding, which is very common when someone passes away. And then in the queer factor of it, I am a big believer, at least in my personal experience, my attraction, my love, my relationships have been through the person and not their how they identify gender wise. So I really wanted to look at that it's like you can transcend that when something's right, when something makes sense, when something feels comfortable. It goes above and beyond what we thought we were the day before. And I think grief is one of the biggest ways to bond us.
That is terrific. And one of the things that in LGBTQ cinema that's starting to how can you say put it in the forefront is the family the family dynamic, because we don't see a lot of films on whether there's two fathers or two mothers raising a child, and this film actually went in that direction, because kind of opens your eyes just to let people know, like, no, this is a regular family like anybody else. So could you talk about that approach in the film, for yours?
Yeah, it was super important to me that these characters were integrated into their lives, and that it wasn't a queer story, but it was queer characters inside of a universal story. Because I think that's what's so important, is that the more we show these families, these relationships, these experiences, and not try to make them what's the word, like shine a light on them as something different, but just embedded in real life. And to me, that was just so important. And especially with the grandma character, she's got no issue with the sexual orientation. She has an issue that they don't practice the Jewish traditions, So I wanted there as well. I wanted that to be like, not every grandparent, not every mother, if they aren't born in this culture, in this time, not everyone has a stark opinion. Not everyone has a sob story. Not everyone has a trauma connected to their sexuality. And it was important to me just to tell to let that just be inside our film, and hopefully encourage others to be able to write that same, from that same place.
Well, then let's round it out with your cast, because you have to find that perfect cast to put all of these pieces together for your film. Talk about Jeanette and Corbin now.
Yeah. So Jeanette, she was like a good friend of mine for years before jumping on board, and she was there at the first table read back in 2016. And I think she played like every character but Jane. She played Jane in the final table read in end of 2018. And it was the first time I didn't play Jane. I thought originally I was gonna be Jane, and no. I was I caught the directing bug too much and was like, I'll give Jane up because I want to wear that hat. And when Jeanette read her at this read, it was just like, hands down, this is Jane. She still auditioned, but even her audition was like, she was the part. There was no question. Like, and in a way that the fact that she'd been through all the iterations of the script, she was so there to hold the baby. And what it did feel like that, it felt like I'd birthed this baby and I was giving her the child, and she's like, I got you. I mean, I think I've got a button on, but I have a tattoo of her words that say, how did I get so lucky? And she wrote that to me right before we started shooting. And that's kind of how I feel about her too. It's like, we just formed this like, love, soul, spiritual connection, making this together and raising the baby together. And then Corbin came recommended by Sterling, who plays Paul in the film. And I think I watched like 2 minutes of some footage of hers on a TV show. I was like, that's Gemma. There she is. And what I loved about Corbin was she really stepped in with this idea of who her Gemma was. And originally it wasn't how I had imagined it, but I was like, I like her even more. I loved all the work Corbin was doing underneath. And it was like this, like almost this danger of it could come up to the surface, and we didn't know when that moment was going to happen. And it made her just so watchable. Like even in the dailies, like looking at all the takes, it was just like this. Yeah, I was doing this. I was just like, oh, and the two of them together, like I just love their stark difference in their energy and the way they kind of experience their grief and their relationship to Bailey and their relationship to Fiona. Like these two women I feel like I got robbed of like real lessons about directing because they were so incredible that I feel like I didn't really have to do much. So I'm sure I'll have a rude awakening on the next one.
I know you love the challenges in a film like this because another cast member that it's important to talk to is the boy. I don't want to slaughter his name. Elohim. Elohim. Talk about him working with the child on set.
Oh my gosh. Elo, he came through casting and his audition tape. So that character Bailey is based on a little boy, Alec, I used to babysit. And I was looking for a very specific child that had that old soul quality, but is still a child. And it's almost like this weird recipe of, childlike and wisdom. And when Elo's audition came in, it was like, oh, that's him. So, and he was like that in real life too. Like he has this depth that most kids his age don't acquire if ever. And he and Jeanette, this is what I was really lucky for. He and Jeanette bonded so beautifully before we even started filming. And I realized like my work as a director, like as long as these two have each other on set and they're going to like hold space for each other, I don't need to worry. Because that friendship is the most important thing here. And the thing about directing kids, my biggest thing is they take things literally. So one time I asked Elo in the scene, he was playing cards in the scene. And I go, this time you say your line, just throw them away. Throw it away. He goes, great, got it. Do the next take. And he says his line and tosses the cards. And I'm going, Elo, why'd you toss the cards? He goes, you said to throw it away. Of course. So I just realized I have to be more like understanding of how I can be a little bit up here when I'm talking. I have to be a little bit more specific, a little bit more, I guess, wordy. But no, working with him, again, I'm spoiled because I'm pretty sure not every kid is Elo caliber.
Precisely. Well, Kelly, this is a wonderful film. I do have one quick question though. What business was Fiona and Jane into?
Paper and Bliss was a graphic design company where they do like designs for, let's see, like a skincare, like they'll do like the design for the thing. And, did all the designs that you don't even see in the film, like it's all in the background and stuff, and like they're
Yeah.
marking it up at one point. I learned to graphic design, so I could do it. So I could, we don't have to pay someone to do it. Which I was like, yo, if this filmmaking thing doesn't work out, I kind of enjoyed that.
That is terrific. I was just curious because I see it in the background all over the place. Well, Kelly, hey, it's been a delight speaking to you about your film, My Fiona. I mean, this is just the tip of the iceberg. It's just the start of your directing. So can't wait to see more from you down the road.
Thank you so much, Gig. It was so lovely talking to you.
Hey, it's terrific. Hopefully next time. Thank you.
Yes, absolutely. Bye.